Tell you, I've got nothing against you. I only want the money. Think of your children. After the robbery, he simply goes back to school and studies for his high school exams. There's no one to scold him anymore at home. His father has moved back to Algeria, and his mother is dying of leukemia. He'll later write in his autobiography that, from that moment on, he stopped caring. Redouane Faïd's crimes are getting bigger, and they seem to be directly inspired by American action films. During a heist, he and his crew end up taking a bank director and his family hostage. They are wearing rubber masks with the faces of famous politicians, just like Patrick Swayze in Point Break. Redouane even delivers a line from the movie when they leave the scene.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and please don't forget to vote!
In another hostage situation 2 years later, Faïd and his men show up in sharp black suits in homage to Tarantino's Reservoir Dogs. They even adopt the thing with the color-coded aliases.
Mr. White, Mr. Blonde, Mr. Blue, Mr. Orange, Mr. Pink.
But this time the job goes sideways and they have to flee from the cops, just like in the movie. However, all these spectacular crimes still don't seem enough for Faïd. One of his all-time favorite gangster films is Michael Mann's Heat, and after watching it over and over again, he sets himself a new goal: the holy grail of robbery, armored trucks. An industrial area on the outskirts of Paris, Faïd is behind the wheel of a Renault. He spots his target, a 6-ton armored truck with 3 armed guards inside, and slams his car straight into it. Within seconds, 2 more cars appear, blocking the truck from the front and back. 5 men in hockey masks jump out, AK-47s in hand, just like in the movie Heat. They surround the truck, moving fast. One of them slaps an explosive-looking package onto the windshield. The guards step out and surrender. Faïd and his crew start emptying the truck, but there's a problem. It's simply too much cash. Moving the money out takes way too long. After just 3 minutes, police are on the scene. Gunfire erupts. Faïd takes a bullet to the shoulder. He does manage to escape with his crew, but he has lost blood on the crime scene. Now the police have his DNA and start to investigate his identity. And if they catch him, he's looking at 15 years behind bars. Stéphane Baye and his 2 captors land for a second time. The hijackers have 2 more men waiting on the ground. They haul large black duffel bags into the helicopter. One of them climbs in, all dressed in black, hood pulled over his head. Stéphane is held at gunpoint the entire time. Now he is ordered to take off again. He flips the ignition switches and presses the starter, but nothing happens. The kidnappers think he's trying to outsmart them and start freaking out. They beat and threaten him. If he doesn't do as they say, his family dies. Stéphane manages to convince them that he really needs to step out to check the wiring. Finally, the engine roars back to life. They take off again. The hijackers are well prepared. The duffel bags are packed with tear gas, smoke grenades, masks, AK-47s, and an angle grinder. And so the heli thunders towards the high-security prison, where Redouane Faïd is sitting calmly in visiting room 50, chatting away with his older brother. "20 years earlier, the Mcoc Hotel in Basel. An employee enters a room to prepare it for the next guest. She has no idea she is not alone. Redouane Faïd has been hiding there for over 3 hours. Outside, the police are searching for him across the entire city. A few hours earlier, Faïd was arrested on a train heading from Germany to France. German federal police took him into custody. He had been hiding abroad for months. But when the officers escort him off the train, he manages to break free. He runs straight across the tracks to shake the cops. A train roars in and blocks the officers from following. He jumps several meters down and twists his ankle, so now he's limping. Somehow he makes it to the back entrance of the Mcoc Hotel and sneaks inside. He finds several open doors, since the cleaning staff are still working. He needs to get out of here somehow. He thinks about calling a contact in Strasbourg, but he doesn't have a phone, so what now? There's a payphone right outside the hotel, but he also doesn't have any coins. He calmly approaches the receptionist to ask if she can give him some change for a bill. She places the coins in front of him, which leads to another problem. His hands are still cuffed. What if she notices and calls the police? Faïd keeps it cool, and brutal disarmament. Before the second officer can react, Faïd drives his elbow into his face. The officer drops and Faïd takes his gun too. Then he runs, as fast as he can, for the second time in 24 hours. You would think a guy like that would be watched extra closely in jail. At 11:18 a.m., this prison guard hears a strange noise. A low hum or buzzing sound coming from outside. To her, it sounds like a leaf blower. Weird, she thinks. The gardeners are not supposed to work on Sundays. Well, it's not a leaf blower. But the facility is prepared for this. This sentinel receives an urgent order over the radio: unseal. The same thing happens on other watchtowers. Each one is equipped with a special case. The guard has to break the seal to open it. Inside is an HK G36 assault rifle. He grabs it and takes aim. The helicopter just keeps descending. The prison yards are covered with anti-helicopter netting. Flying in here would be a suicide mission. But this is not a random helicopter. It's a 60-year-old vintage model, just small enough to slip through this unsecured gap in the last one of the prison yards. Also, this is not a regular landing. In fact, they're not touching down at all. Redouane Faïd must have known somehow that prison guards are not allowed to shoot at a flying helicopter. There's a proper protocol for this. And maybe he also knew that Stéphane Baye is one of the few pilots in all of France who are skilled enough to pull this off, to keep this specific type of vintage heli steady enough while hovering above the ground. Investigators will later discover that Faïd had been writing letters to Stefan's stepdaughter for 2 entire years. And this friendship was not Faïd's only connection to the outside world, because at this point, Redouane Faïd was already a star. October 2010, 12 years after his escape in Basel, 8 years before his helicopter prison break, Redouane Faïd sits in a French talk show.
Gangster, braqueur, voyou, voleur, appelez ça comme vous voulez, il revendique à peu près tous ces mots-là. Bonjour Redouane Faïd.
Bonjour.
Les banques, vous en avez braqué combien en tout?
Alors, officiellement, j'en ai braqué qu'une, puisque j'étais condamné que pour une banque. On m'a soupçonné d'en avoir braqué une trentaine, mais bon, ça, c'est que des dires et des racontards.
He's a welcome guest at the time, a bit of a sensation even. Redouane Faïd has written a book about his cinematic crimes, so now he's making the rounds on French TV to promote it.
C'est terrible de dire ça, mais le cinéma a été pour moi un mode d'emploi pour braquer.
Et on voyait ça un petit peu, l'attaque de fourgon blindé en ligne de mire. Pourquoi? Parce que quand tu attaques un fourgon blindé, c'est le top des tops.
The caption on screen reads, former gangster. Well, not so long ago, he was anything but. In late 1998, 3 months after his escape in Basel, Faïd was caught and sentenced to 18 years in jail for armed robbery. He was granted parole for good behavior after just under 9 years. Now he presents himself as a changed man, as someone who has learned his lesson.
La vie de bandit, c'est que de la vie de merde. Vous savez, vous faites souffrir tout le monde. Quand vous allez en prison, c'est une sanction carrément qui est collective parce que votre famille, votre femme, vos enfants, vos frères, vos sœurs, vos parents, tout le monde paye.
He got married. His brother has landed him an office job. He appears to be taking it easy now. At one point, he attends a film event where Michael Mann is physically present, the director of Heat, the very film that inspired his biggest heist.
Moi, personnellement, je suis un ancien gangster. Malheureusement, je ne m'en vante pas. Je viens de faire une dizaine d'années de prison. J'ai attaqué des fourgons blindés, des bijouteries, des banques, monsieur Toubiana, je pense. Et je leur ai répondu que non. J'avais un conseiller technique, un prof de fac, une sorte de mentor. Et il s'appelle Michael Mann. Alors, ma question, en fait, elle est simple. C'est est-ce qu'il a conscience qu'il y ait des gangsters qui puissent s'inspirer de son cinéma? Parce que moi, ça m'est arrivé.
Faïd addresses Mann directly. Michael Mann looks amused, but also a bit uncomfortable. He doesn't know what to say.
Thank you for that. I don't know how to respond.
In another talk show stint, Faïd is asked if he thinks he could ever relapse.
Ah non, moi mes démons, vous savez, ils sont morts, ils sont pas endormis.
That's a bold-faced lie, because at this point, he's already back to committing crimes. And not just petty theft, but a crime so shocking it will shake the entire country. May 20th, 2010, Créteil, a suburb southeast of downtown Paris. 2 officers are on routine patrol, Thierry M. and his partner Aurélien Fouquet. Fouquet is 26 years old. She became a mother just a year ago. For them, it's just another day on the job. But then they get a call from the National Police. They're told to head to the A4 highway exit. Some criminals are on the run in a white van. They pull up at an intersection with flashing lights and blaring sirens. They have no idea what they're about to get into. These men had a plan to rob an armored cash truck carrying 16 million euros. But 30 minutes ago, a routine traffic stop turned their heist into a high-speed, all-out chase with the police. Now they've crashed and need a new getaway car. But at that exact moment, the 2 patrol officers arrive. The gang doesn't hesitate to open fire. The windshield of the patrol car alone is pierced by 16 bullets. Fouquet is hit multiple times. The gunmen flee. Fouquet is rushed to the hospital, and by the end of the day, she is dead. The murder of Aurélien Fouquet sends shockwaves throughout the entire country. At her funeral, thousands of police officers stand in mourning. Among them is French President Nicolas Sarkozy. He posthumously awards her a Medal of Honor and delivers a promise. He will do everything it takes to find out who did it.
Les meurtriers d'Aurélie Fouquet, je le dis devant son cercueil, seront punis avec la sévérité qu'exige l'ignominie de leur crime.
Redouane Faïd feels safe. So safe he keeps telling his gangster stories on camera. Here he is in a documentary. The film recounts how Fouquet was gunned down, and then Redouane Faïd appears, not as a suspect, not as a fugitive, but as an expert on this kind of heist. At the time, the filmmakers had no idea that the man sitting in front of them had a part in the killing of Aurélien Fouquet. The failed attack on the armored cash truck has Fayeed's signature all over it, but he has an airtight alibi, and he swears he was not involved. But investigators keep digging and eventually find compelling surveillance footage. A security camera has caught Fayeed inside the white van used by the criminals. Fayeed was not on the scene when the shots were fired, but police gather enough evidence to pin him down as the mastermind behind the operation. After 1 year on the run, Fayeed is captured, again, and he goes straight back to prison. Two inmates are taking out the trash, accompanied by a prison guard. Suddenly, they see a helicopter in the courtyard next to them. They wonder if it could be firefighters. The unarmed warden bolts into a nearby office, hiding behind bulletproof glass. Meanwhile, the two prisoners are about to witness Redouane Fayeed's spectacular prison escape up close. One of the three men stays with Stefan, the pilot, and continues to press a gun to his head. The other two jump out. They are masked and wearing bulletproof vests beneath their clothes. Each of them carries an AK-47. They've just landed in the honored courtyard. Prisoners do not have access here. It's only used when inmates enter or leave the facility. That's why nobody thought anti-helicopter cables were needed here. The man in green runs towards a reinforced white door. He carries an angle grinder with a 14-inch 35cm blade. His partner sets off 3 smoke grenades, releasing thick white smoke. The helicopter's spinning blades churn it into a roaring chaos, until the entire courtyard is engulfed. A complete whiteout. The sound of the cutting angle screeches through the entire prison. Fayeed knows what that means. It's time. By now it's clear to everyone that nobody here is blowing leaves. The blade of the grinder slices through the locking doors. Clean, precise. 40 seconds is all it takes. The man in green can just push the door open and step inside. The guards slowly realize what's happening, but they're not carrying firearms and are unable to interfere. One of them sticks to protocol and calls the Civil Aviation Authority. They don't understand what's happening. Another calls the standard line for police emergencies and gets put on hold. A third contacts the local police, but the officer on the other end thinks it's a prank. The sentinels on the 4 watchtowers are the only ones carrying firearms, but they can't see the helicopter because their view is blocked by other buildings. And they're not allowed to fire at a flying aircraft anyway. Total, utter chaos. By now, Fayeed's brother knows exactly what's going on. He's furious. He thought his brother was ready to change. And now this, another escape. He just can't help himself. Fayeed's accomplice has already cut his way through several locks, and now he has reached the door to visiting room 50, where Redouane Fayeed is waiting. The angle grinder slices through the metal. The door is open. Fayeed has been waiting for this. He storms out and rushes down a long corridor, followed by the man in green. His brother is left behind, frozen and stunned. At 11:28 a.m., Redouane Fayeed steps into the prison courtyard, 10 minutes after the helicopter got there. He sees the 2 inmates that have taken out the trash, brings his right hand to his temple, and gives them an Air Force salute. Then he climbs into the helicopter. Dozens of inmates stand pressed against the bars of their cells to watch. As the helicopter lifts off, the entire prison erupts into applause. It's almost like a movie scene.
A French gangster who broke out of jail by hijacking a helicopter.
A notorious gangster is on the run again.
Criminal who is a big movie fan. He has broken out of prison twice
and
now.
You can just about make out the helicopter flying off into the distance.
Multiple armed men who hijacked a helicopter
which picked up Redouane Fayeed from within the prison grounds.
The news of Redouane Fayeed's prison break spreads across the world. He was already famous, a TV figure, the center of a cult-like hype. But this is a whole new level. A well-known French actress writes on social media, "Bravo, Redouane Fayeed. All of France is with you." The French police declare him the country's most wanted man. 3 months later, the authorities track him down, hiding in an apartment in his hometown, Cailles. He's been disguising himself under a burqa during public outings. When he finally stands trial in 2020, authorities take extreme security measures, including a no-fly zone above the courthouse. The court cites a psychiatric assessment describing him as a social predator and gifted at manipulation. He uses his charm and intelligence to control others and get what he wants. Fayeed himself says that for him, it was always about the adrenaline. He says he is addicted to it and calls himself a sick man. His Hollywood-style heists made
the internet for help with a deceivingly simple question. Who am I? I am an amnesiac who woke up with no memories in 2004. Nobody knows who I am. Ask me anything. In his post, the man talked about the mysterious circumstances of what could be described as his second birth. It was August 31st, 2004, just after 6 a.m. at a Burger King in Richmond Hill, Georgia. Sanyo R., a crew member at the fast food restaurant, stepped outside to take out the trash, and that's when she saw him. A middle-aged man lying naked behind the dumpster. Though it was still morning, his skin was already sunburned and blistered. His body was covered in fire ants. A red rash bloomed across his back and legs, raw and angry from the bites. He wasn't moving. Sanyo screamed and ran inside to get help. By the time emergency responders arrived, the man had begun to stir, disoriented, confused, and unable to speak coherently. No signs of assault, no clear injuries, no belongings, no clothes, no ID, just a nameless body, nearly dead, discarded behind a dumpster. An ambulance took the unidentified male, also known as a John Doe, to St. Joseph's Hospital in Savannah, where he was admitted under the placeholder name Burger King Doe. Years later, when the man with no identity shared his extremely strange origin story on Reddit, the questions began pouring in. Are you a time traveler? Everyone is a time traveler. They're born, they live, and they die. Do you have any characteristics of past addictions? How bad was your health? Could you have been homeless? One of the initial reports said that my lab results were surprisingly normal, indicating that I was in good health considering that I was just a homeless bum. No characteristics of past addictions. When the man had first been brought to the hospital after being found behind the dumpster, at first glance, he appeared to be a relatively healthy white male in his mid-50s. With a long, unwashed beard and cracked fingernails, he looked like someone who had been living on the streets for years. But nothing about him quite added up. His vitals were stable, no drugs or alcohol in his system. His labs were what one doctor called surprisingly within normal limits. There was, however, signs of past trauma. 3 shallow depressions on his skull, some scars on his left arm and neck, but nothing acute. No bruises or broken bones, no clear cause for his current state. He kept his eyes tightly shut, refused to eat, spoke only in murmurs. But when touched by hospital staff, he flinched violently, flailing his arms, jerking his legs. After several days, when Burger King Doe finally began to speak, he was asked for his name. "They call me BK around here," the man replied. A nurse gently asked again for his real name. "BK," he said again, "but you're getting me confused." And with that, he was silent again for days. What was it like to wake up remembering nothing? Were you panicked or upset when you woke up? No, I was just in a daze. While this was true at first, on the 8th day of his hospitalization, everything changed. BK became agitated, angry. He lashed out at the nurses, cursing them, calling them beasts and demons. He demanded to see a priest. When one arrived, he turned on him too, denouncing him as an imposter. Psychiatrists observed his concerning behavior closely. Their initial diagnosis was catatonic schizophrenia, and thus began administering powerful antipsychotics. Apart from that, his vision was almost non-existent. Untreated cataracts clouded his world to the point that he couldn't even make out facial features in the fog. But even as BK would begin to calm down and become more coherent, the case would only get stranger. Eventually, BK was transferred to the psychiatric unit at Memorial Health, a public hospital across town. That's when the formal interviews began. "What's your name?" "I don't know." "Where are you from?" "Maybe Indianapolis?" "Do you remember anyone? Family? Friends?" "I think I have brothers. 3, but I can't see their faces." He described fragments of a life he may have lived, the inside of an old movie theater, a road cutting through a cornfield, streets he believed belonged to Denver, but the details were inconsistent. No names, no concrete places. The only thing he seemed certain of was his date of birth, August 29th, 1948. "How do you know how old you are?" "I was born 10 years before Michael Jackson. I remember that distinctly." But the staff noted something curious. While his personal memories were obliterated, his factual memory remained intact. "Do you remember any famous people or people you knew before the accident?" "Someone asked me the presidents, and I got all of the 20th century ones right. That was one of the tests from the doctors." Surprise twist, all he could remember were future presidents. BK knew that George W. Bush was president. He recalled that America had invaded Iraq in 2003. He answered historical questions with ease. This combination, detailed public knowledge but a void where personal memory should be, it was almost as if his mind had been severed, like the characters in the TV show Severance. But, of course, there were some doctors who suspected he was faking. Maybe he was a fugitive, maybe he wanted to disappear, or perhaps this performance was just for attention. But others disagreed. The pain in his face, the panic in his voice, the disjointed thoughts, the violent reactions to touch, it didn't feel rehearsed. This man was something the hospital staff had never seen before. A living, breathing John Doe. And they had no idea what to do with him. Eventually, he was released from Memorial Hospital and forced to fend for himself on the streets. The man with no belongings, no name, and no past was now walking the streets of Savannah, alone and